So let's go over critical thinking. So before we get to look at the components of critical thinking, we need to know what critical thinking is. Well, different people can say different things according to what they think critical thinking is. This is just getting to think so attentively, where you just get to pay attention to things. This is where you get to dedicate your time a lot to research and also considering ideas. And then we have got also poor and elder. So this also in 2016, I mean in 2020, got to define critical thinking. And for them, they define critical thinking as the art. So they call it as an art. Well, if it is an art, this means not everyone is a critical thinker because art is not to everyone. Others are able to work with some wood. Others can work with metal. Others can work with mud. Just like that, those are arts. So let's define critical thinking as the art of analyzing, not just analyzing, but also evaluating. So when you're able to analyze and evaluate thoughts, so that is what they call as critical thinking. So critical thinking as the art of analyzing and evaluating thought processes with a view to improving them. So you get to analyze and evaluate thought processes in order for you to be able to improve them. Your aim is to make sure that there's an improvement. So that is what these two people defined as critical thinking. So just that art, analyzing and also being able to evaluate. Now let's look at the components of critical thinking. So critical thinking gives due consideration to one thing that critical thinking looks at is evidence. So is there evidence? If you want to think about something critically, some people who think critically are going to look at everything with evidence. Is there evidence? If there's no evidence, then obviously it wouldn't be true. And then also look at the context of judgment. So critical thinkers get to look at the context of judgment. Why judging? How can they judge? So how can you judge about this something? You need to look at the context. What is happening at that time will determine the way you are going to be able to judge that thing. So if you get to look at a story, what is happening for you to be able to judge? So the only way you can be able to judge is when you get to look at the context and not what you already know or heard or what you've believed. So you look at the context. That is what brings judgment. So this critical thinking is a criteria of making judgment. It is one thing that is used to make judgment. So you just don't make judgment anyhow. For you to be able to make judgment, you have to think about something more critically. You need to analyze it. You need to evaluate it. You see if it is really worth it or if it is not. So that's when you can make a judgment. So the methods or techniques used to make judgment, any method, any technique that is used to make judgment, that's critical thinking. Okay. So apart from that, it is also an understanding of the nature of the problem and the question at hand. So get to look at the nature, what kind of problem he is here. And what is also, you get to understand also the question. You need to understand the question very much. You just don't answer. Get to understand what is the question about. So these are some of the components when it comes to critical thinking. Look at the evidence, the context of judgment. Also, for you to be able to make judgment, you need to be a critical thinker. Also, methods and techniques that are used to make judgments. That is critical thinking. And also the nature of the problem will determine how you get to judge it. That is critical thinking. And also looking at the question at hand. So this is about critical thinking. Now, why critical thinking? Well, critical thinking is not only about logic. We shall talk about that. It is about one, clarity, credibility, and also accuracy, precision, relevance. You just want that depth and breadth and just significance and fairness. In other words, when you're talking about critical thinking. Why critical thinking? It is just to think outside the box. You need to make sure that you are really clear about something before you get to pass any judgment. The information that you gather is credible enough. It is true, it is honest, it is trustworthy. The information is so accurate. It is accurate, it is connecting, it is precise. The information is also relevant, very, very relevant. The information that you get to find is not just information, but should be deep information, having a deeper information. The information should be significant and it should make sure that there is fairness. That is why there is need for critical thinking. Why critical thinking? For clarity, credibility, honest, straightforward, accuracy, precision, relevance. That is why critical thinking is there. Now, how do you become critical thinker? When should you become a critical thinker? So, becoming critical thinker. One, when should you become one? When should you be a critical thinker? This happens when you want to make a judgment. And then when you want to decide. When you want to solve a problem. When you also want to figure out what to believe. And also, just critical thinking encourages one to see issues from as many perspectives as possible. So you see issues from many perspectives. So this is about critical thinking. So when should you think critically? When you want to make a judgment. Most of the times we've judged people uncritically before even getting to think deeply about something. So critical thinking has to do with deeper thinking about something. So you need to make sure that before you judge, you think about it. Before you make any decision whether to do this or this, make sure you think about it. It is true, before you get to decide, there is going to be a battle within you, that dilemma within you of whether to do this and that. But you need to make sure that you pay particular attention, you get to decide. That is why you need to think critically, get ideas, get facts of the matter. And also, when you want to solve a problem, make sure you get to think critically, not just being able to move just from there and then you want to solve without even getting to think about it. If you want to know who to believe, what to believe, make sure you think critically. Get all the available truths. Make sure that all the proof is there for you to believe. And also, when you want to see an issue from many perspectives, you want to look at this point, you get to think critically. So this is when critical thinking is needed. Now, what is the importance of critical thinking? So critical thinking is an important element of all professional fields and academic disciplines. In any professional field, in any academic discipline, there is need for critical thinking. Is it in your studies? Is it in anything in your work? There's need for critical thinking because a lot of things have been made, a lot of decisions have been made without thinking critically. So that is the importance. We need to be able to make sure that we get to think about things critically before any decision is passed. Alright, so now what would be the importance of thinking critically? So the first thing, the importance of critical thinking. One, students at the tertiary level of learning are encouraged to use logic and critical thinking too. The first thing, broaden your understanding. When you are a critical thinker, you don't just get to accept things. You get to make researches and make sure that you get to read a lot to make sure that you know the whole truth about the matter. And so that gets to broaden your understanding about something. And also, the importance is to interpret information. You need critical thinking, because without critical thinking, you might not be able to interpret information. You might just take it direct the same way it is, and even if it had an implicit meaning instead of explicit meaning. So if the meaning is supposed to be implied and not gotten directly, you need to get to interpret information. Very, very important. And also, when you want to make conclusions, not just conclusions, but justified conclusions, you need to be a critical thinker. You need to think critically. And also the ability to analyze. The importance of critical thinking. You are able to analyze, you are able to evaluate, you are able to explain, and you are able to restructure your thinking. You are able to do all this when you are a critical thinker. You can analyze a lot of things. You can evaluate a lot of things, explain and restructure even your thoughts. Even if they are not in the right order, they are taking you to another way. You are able to control them as a critical thinker. Now, let's get to look at facts and opinions and also logic. So, academic writing requires the writer to distinguish between a fact and opinion. Now, what's the difference between a fact and opinion? So, starting with a fact. So, a fact is what is true. That thing which is true. Of course, it will not be easily seen. At times, it's very difficult to see what a fact is, but facts are known. What is true? It's not a belief, it is a fact. What is true? And what has actually happened? That is what is called a fact. A fact actually happened. Apart from that, a fact is something that is observed. Apart from just observed, it is verified. And apart from just being verified, it is proven. Proven from research and through a lot of ways. So that is what is referred to as a fact. What is true, what has actually happened, what has been observed, verified, and also proven. Now, what is an opinion? So an opinion is a statement of a person's perception. So it is simply a perception from a person. What you think. Perception, your feelings, maybe what you feel about something, or even beliefs. Beliefs can also be opinions. So it is a simple value judgment. That is what is called as an opinion. So you just get to judge this thing just simple without even getting to think more about it. That is an opinion. Now, what is logic? We need to also understand what logic is. So when we are talking about logic, so we have got Cope et al. This in 2016 defined logic. So according to Cope et al., the definition of logic is simply the procedure, the procedures, and also principles of reasoning. So for you to be able to reason, any procedure and any principle that you are going to use for you to reason, that is the logic. So procedures and principles of reasoning concerned with making distinction between correct and wrong. So any procedure, any principle concerned with making distinction. What's the difference? What's the difference between what is right and what is wrong? So whatsoever that you can use, that is your logic. And so logic facilitates the writer's or student's ability to. So this logic is going to facilitate your ability to be able to evaluate. That is one thing that it does. Logic facilitates your ability to be able to evaluate resources. So without logic, it will be very, very difficult to be able to evaluate resources, also claims or arguments to arrive at the truth. So if someone is making this argument or they are making this claim, you have to evaluate it, and that procedure, that principle you are going to use to be able to evaluate any claim, any argument or any resource is what is called logic. And logic makes sure that you procure correct information. So from logic, you get to procure correct information. You cannot be able to get correct information if you don't have logic. If you don't have principles and procedures that we are going to use. So how do you just get correct information? From where do you get it? Unless you have got logic. Those procedures and principles to reason in order for you to make a distinction between what is right and wrong. So if you can't make a distinction that this is right and this is wrong, then you are, of course, unlogical. If you can't make a distinction that this is what is right and that is what is wrong. So also, logic facilitates the writer's or the student's ability to identify inconsistencies in argument. So that thing that is going to be able to make you to see that this person is not consistent with what they are saying. For example, it is in a court. You ask this person a question, they accept. At the end, you just want to see. You ask them again, they refuse. So that thing that is going to make you to see the inconsistent in what someone is saying, that is what is called logic. So what is going to help you identify inconsistencies in argument? So apart from that, logic also helps to construct argument validated by rational inferences. So logic basically is more, I don't know what you use as the principles and the procedures that helps you identify this is not right, this is right. Such is what is called as a reasoning. So it helps to evaluate things, to procure correct information. How do I get correct information? What is going to help you is what is called reasoning, and also to identify that this person is not standing on what they are saying. That is also logic. Now let's get to look at reasoning, because we are saying that logic is the process and principles of reasoning concerned with determining what is right and wrong. Then what is reasoning itself? So when we're talking about reasoning, it's simply the process of making reliable judgment. So that is what we call as reasoning, the process of making reliable judgment. If you are able to make a judgment that you can rely on, then you can be able to reason. Logic is not reasoning. Logic is any principle or any procedure that you are going to use for you to be able to reason in order to make a decision whether this is right or wrong. But reasoning is the process of making reliable judgment. So a person who has got accurate information and sound concepts can begin to reason. If you have got reliable information or accurate information, if you have got accurate information and also in, you have got a sound concept. If your concepts are right, like what you believe in is good or true, then you are able to reason. Otherwise, if you have got wrong information or wrong concepts and you don't have true accurate information, these judgments that you are going to make, they are not going to be reliable. They are going to be wrong judgments. This means for you to be able to reason well, you need to have information and you need to have sound concepts. And so, logic cannot be used when it is based on fault judgment. Logic cannot be used when it is based on faulty judgment. So, you can't use logic when you're talking about faulty judgment. Logical reasoning requires no explanation or proof beyond itself. Wow. So even as we get to make decisions, logical reasoning, if you can reason logically, there is no need of an explanation or proof beyond itself. So just logical reasoning itself is enough when you've got that sound concept, if you've got that accurate information, even the judgment that you're going to make is going to be enough. You don't need any explanation or any proof beyond itself. So just the logic reasoning itself is enough for you to make a decision without any explanation or any proof. Now, let's get to look at the types of reasoning. So on the types of reasoning, the first one, inductive reasoning. And then we have got deductive reasoning. And then also causal reasoning. Now, what are all these types of reasoning? What do they mean? When you're talking about inductive, it is a formulation of a conclusion based on observation. So the only way you can be able to conclude, remember, reasoning is being able to conclude, making a reliable judgment. So the only way you are able to conclude or make a reliable judgment or to formulate a conclusion is when there is observation. That is inductive. There is observation. It is induced by observation. Judgment is induced by observation, often considered as unreliable because it's only based on observation. So, mostly inductive reasoning is considered unreliable. That is because it is only based on what you are able to see. Only what you are able to see. Okay. And then there is also deductive reasoning. Now, when we talk of deductive reasoning, is the formulation of conclusion based on previously known facts. Previously known facts. For example, just this incident happened in the near past, and this was done, and it was right. What was done was what was right. So, such judgment that you are going to use based on what was previously known for a fact is what is referred to as a deductive reasoning, and it is considered reliable because it is a fact previously known. You already know this. But this one is considered unreliable because it only comes from observation. Now, when you talk of causal reasoning, it creates a link between entities without a common origin. Cause and effect reasoning. That is what is called causal reasoning. So it creates a link between entities without a common origin. So you get to link two things that have got no common origin. They don't come from the same place. So that is called a cause and effect reasoning. So it was developed by Wolf and Barbie. That was in 2015. Okay. Now, what are some of the examples that we can give? Examples of reasoning fallacies. So let's talk about those. Okay, so examples of reasoning fallacies. The first example is we can talk about is false cause. Now, when you're talking about false cause, it occurs when there is a wrong assumption about the cause of an event because of a noticed relationship between an act and an event. So you get to give a wrong assumption. Remember, this is reasoning. Reasoning is to get to conclude about something and you make a reliable judgment. Now, at times you can make a judgment because what you've known is not true. So it occurs when there is a wrong assumption. Okay. So wrong assumption about the cause of an event. Alright, so that is a false cause as an example of reasoning fallacies. Now, wrong assumption about the cause of an event. Why do you get to have this wrong assumption? There is a coincidence between the event and the act. So there is this coincidence. Maybe every time you get to pass this direction, you always see this person. Every time you get to pass, like every time you get to pass this direction, you always see this person. There is a coincidence, and so you are able to make a wrong assumption about the cause. Maybe you think what causes that person to pass that direction is when you are about to pass. So you are going to make a what? A wrong assumption between an action and an event. All right. So, for example, if you say that many students who achieve 6 points in grade 12 study medicine, and you just study medicine if you have 6 points. So those are two different things. So they are brought about by wrong assumption because of a link between the cause of an event and the event. It is seen most of the times that many students who achieve 6 points at grade 12 study medicine. But it doesn't mean that you will study medicine if you have 6 points. You can study anything that you want. So there is that wrong conclusion. Or for example, Mwansa comes to church as the bell rings every Sunday. So just as the bell rings, I come to church. A person can make a wrong assumption to say Mwansa's arrival at church causes the bell. It is not my arrival at church which causes the bell to ring. It's just that I arrive at church every time when the bell is about to ring. So those are also just the wrong assumptions. So these are what? False cause. Those are examples of wrong fallacies, reasoning fallacies. Now, let's get to look at also false analog. So when we're talking about false analog, this indicates that similarity in one aspect contains similarity in another aspect. So similarity in one aspect, so portends similarity in other aspects. You know, most of the times wrong decisions are made because you think if there is this thing here, then also this other thing is there. For example, you take that similarity in one aspect or is also makes sense also in it is also similar in another aspect. So such is what we call false analog. You take something falsely, it is not the right way. The similarity in this one effect is not the same as the similarity in the other aspect. But because you think they are the same, you get to take them in that way. So those are what we call false analogs. Now there is also false authority. Okay, let's get to look at that false authority. That is the third one. So when you talk of false authority, this is also called expert fallacy. So expert fallacy or false authority, a fallacy or persuasive technique which assumes that the opinions of a recognized expert in a particular area extends to another area. It includes using an alleged authority as evidence in an argument where the evidence is irrelevant to the current argument. An example, a lecturer in anatomy accepting to care for patients, though not trained as a medical doctor. So, such is a false authority. Now, it is a persuasive technique which assumes that the opinion of a recognized expert in a particular area extends to another. The fact that you teach anatomy, the fact that you are anatomy lecturer doesn't mean that you are able to work in the hospital. Your training is what? Your training is in that aspect to teach anatomy, not to work in the hospital. So just that persuasive technique which assumes that the opinion of a recognized expert or an expert in that field, and so you think you can also do it in another field. Such is what gets to lead to false authority. So it includes using an alleged authority as evidence in an argument. So because you know this, you feel you are able to do this. So you get to give it as evidence because you know about the human body from your teaching. You think you can be able to what? To get to take care of the people in the hospital. So that is what is called false authority. So another one, the reasoning fallacies, that is ad hominem. So this may invalidate an argument by attacking the writer's motive or person. So ad hominem is just get to it invalidate an argument by attacking the writer's motive or personality. So if there's an argument that is happening, you just get to say what they said, you invalidate it is not true or it is not correct by attacking what someone wrote. So that is what is called ad hominem. Invalidate an argument or make sure just get to stop an argument. This argument is not necessary by attacking the motive behind what someone wrote. For example, these people were writing what was on their motive was another thing. And because there's an argument that is happening, so you get to invalidate that argument by using just a motive that the one who wrote the book used. So apart from that, we have also hast generalization. Okay, has generalization. Now, this reaches a conclusion without sufficient logically justifiable evidence. So this is just getting like it is haste if you can just see from the word. You get to make a conclusion without justifiable evidence. You have concluded about the matter, but are you able to justify the evidence that you have? So this often proceeds from the particulars to the general. So an example is a student concludes that smoking is a safe habit because her grandfather smoked and lived to be 94 years. So that is has generalization. You get to conclude about a matter without justifiable evidence just because it happened somewhere. Okay. And then there is also appeal to tradition. Okay, so appeal to tradition. So when you're talking about appeal to tradition, it is a logical fallacy arising from dependence on the status on things they have always been. Example, one must study medicine because the parents and grandparents studied medicine. So that is what we call appeal to tradition. So you just get to maintain what has been happening. Because this has been happening every time, so I'll continue doing it also. Because everyone in my family is a teacher, so I'll also be a teacher. So you continue to do that. So these are some of the things when it comes to reasoning fallacies. So a fallacy is simply an error. So reasoning errors, at times we fail to reason well because of some things that have been there always. Fallacies are common errors in reasoning that will undermine the logic of your argument. So they are going to make you to fail to reason well. Okay. So now I'm just going to say again on this as I even get to conclude. So we are talking of ad hominem. That is the last one. So a basic example that we can talk about when we're talking about hard hominem is a person telling you you are stupid, so I don't care what you have to say. In response to hearing them, present a well thought position. So remember what we said about hard hominem. So this is simply being able to invalidate an argument by attacking the writer's motive. So just get to invalidate, like the argument is there, but you just want to make sure you invalidate it by attacking someone's motive. So ad hominem just means appealing to feelings or prejudices rather than intellect. And an example is you get to say maybe Monster's ideas are irrelevant today because the technologies we use and rely on would have been like they wouldn't have been inconceivable to him. He wouldn't have managed them. So if I get to put an idea today, you say it doesn't make sense. It is not important because the technology that we have today, this person can't manage. His discovery was made some time back. So that is ad hominem. You just get to disqualify an argument because of getting to attack someone's opinion, what someone got to speak about something. Hope we have really gotten that. I've tried to say it again and again. So when we talk about false authority, so we are saying on false authority, this is expert fallacies. Okay. This is just a fallacy of persuasive technique which assumes that the opinion of a recognized expert in a particular area extends to another area. For example, the fact that you are a biology teacher doesn't mean you'll be able to what? You'll be able to teach. I mean, you'll be able to handle the patient because you know something about biology. Or the fact that you are a lecturer in anatomy and physiology doesn't mean you are able to control the situation. Okay, so that is on false authority. And then on false cause, so false cause is a type of informal fallacy or a wrong error or persuasive technique in which a temporal sequence of events is assumed to be causal sequence of an event. Thus, because B follows A is considered to be part of B. So that is a false cause. For example, every time I reach a church, the bell rings. It doesn't mean that my arrival at church is what causes the bell to ring. So that is a false fallacy. Let's hope we've also gotten that. This is just a summary even as we get to conclude here. Now, when you talk about false analog, a false analog is a type of informal fallacy. It states that since item A and item B both have quality X in common, they must also have quality Y in common. So the fact that me and you we have got this thing in common doesn't mean that you have got other things in common. So that is what false analog talks about. Similarity in one aspect portends similarity in another aspect. So that is false analog. Well, thank you so much for having been present or in this video. Hope that was helpful and stay blessed even as we get to prepare